Hello, I'm Dr. Jigare Pancha, an occupational therapist. So here I have got you the another video of infections and tumors of musculoskeletal system. There are many more videos to know more things. Stay tuned to our channel. So just before starting the today's topic, I'll like to talk about the previous topic. That is, in that we have discussed about healing of the spontaneously reactivated infected non-union a soft tissue defect in scar zone, as well as uh, originating from a cross leg flap. Also, we have discussed certain surgical management, that is uh, development and sample collection, stabilization, bone grafting measures, treatment indications, which may include incomplete bone consolidation, usually with loose or partially broken osteosynthesis material, sequestrum formation, fistulation, chronic infectious arthritis, bone defect, soft tissue defect. So there are certain things which we discussed before, and in that laboratory test, that is white blood cells, CRP, which has been used, imaging, X-ray, standard X-rays, computed tomography, three-phase and anti-granulocyte scintigraphy, SPECT or CT, basically MRI or fistulography. So these are certain test and investigation procedures which are being conducted. So today will be more of focusing on the late first presentation on chronic post-traumatic osteomyelitis. So in this chronic post-osteomyelitis, if you say that post-traumatic osteomyelitis, there are certain clinical symptoms and diagnostic procedures which are to be considered in this form. So in the previous thing, what we have discussed is that because of the infection, the healing is compromised. There is certain bone grafting is also done. So then the problem is in the weight bearing and weight transformation of the individual when the person is standing, maybe static or dynamic, or the person is ambulating, maybe on the even surface, on the rough terrain, on the up and down, or stairs and something. So weight bearing is the problem. Weight bearing is compromised and is not being transferred in an inadequate way, so that forms functional limitations in certain ways. So that is also to be checked in our in our case, because we are not going to operate the patient, but yes, we are helpful to the patient in the form of surgical, in the form of rehabilitation management, and to keep him as much as functionally updated. And as I always say, grooming skills is very much important, is because the hygiene is very much to be taken care, because as this is the case of infections, so it should not grow further. So if you see that in this the clinical symptoms and diagnostic procedures, so here you have medical history, clinical findings, laboratory test, imaging, treatment indications, which was about chronic fistula, chronic pain. Then you have lack of consolidation, chronic infectious arthritis, and soft tissue defect. So, in medical history and clinical findings, the development, you can say, so as I discussed that medical history and clinical findings, if you talk about this, so there are certain development without interruption from a post-traumatic infections, or even you can say secondary presentation, following an asymptomatic interval lasting months to decades. So, start of a new episode is characterized by a gradual or sudden recurrence of erythema. So, this is what it talks about, and it's how the things takes place. So, if you say that, you can say, so how these infections grow certainly, and how these issues can occur, and how this form delay in the occurrence of the healing. So again, as I told, arrhythmia is I'll just define arrhythmia is about is superficial reddening of the skin, usually in patches, as a result of injury or irritation, causing dilatation of the blood capillaries. So So that is what I know. So as in a whole sentence, I like to say again that the start of a new episode characterized by gradual or sudden recurrence of erythema, alternating fistula occurrence, and closure accomplished by retention pain. So maybe accompanied by pain and fever. So the patients may are mainly affected by, we can say, pungent pus odor, that is a change in microbes may alter this, or there is inability to bathe in public pools, then inability to work due to pus discharge in occupational involving foods, for example hospitality, bakery, butcher shop and other, and reduce physical capability. So this is where our role comes in all the way. You see here I have defined very functional way, the inability to work due to pus discharge in occupations involving food, or you have inability to bathe in public pools, or also there is a, because of the pungent disorders of the pus, and also there is a reduced physical capabilities. So so also very rarely a fistula carcinoma develops, usually only with fistulas that have been present for decades. So this tends to be only locally aggressive and rarely m- metastasize. So it's also here in the image you see is 18 years after fracture and osteomyelitis with distant abscess. The arrows are showing distant abscesses, osteomyelitis in this image if you see here. Then there are certain laboratory tests which are to be considered at this point of time. So so there are certain laboratory tests which are being done. That is infection parameters with white blood cells and CRP are often normal or only moderately abnormal. Then in imaging, that is standard X-rays, that is about monitoring of progress. The appropriate images are often missing. Recent images in 4Vs which I have presented in my previous classes about anterior to posterior lateral obliques, and which provide an important overview. So periosteal bone formation, residual foreign bodies like metal, cement beads, mobile sequestra in the soft tissue or bone are of particular interest, and it's important to search for the distal abscess. In computed tomography, possibly with contrast agent in fistula, this is the most sensitive examination method to detect sequestra. It is essential to look for the isolated bone fragments, which are sometimes very small. In the often bulky bone mass, which is often very dense, the examination for zones of massive endosteal bone formation within the medullary cavity, sometimes accompanied by a distal intraosseous abscess cavity, and which may form fistulas toward the surface of some cases. So we have here three-phase and granulocyte scintigraphy help to assess the localization of the infection. Supplemental spectroscopy may provide more precise information. Also, MRI reveals the edema associated with the zone of inflammation. Fistulography is again particularly useful in the operating room. So this is how the investigations and procedures are done for this. There are certain treatment indications which I mentioned here, that is chronic fistula, then you have chronic pain, then lack of consolidation, chronic infectious arthritis, and soft tissue defect. So this is how the things are being conducted in this form. So also it is important to consider that there are many factors which take place in this role at a certain given point. There are many investigation procedures also which are to be which are supposed to be taken in account, because in this infection also, and in the cases of investigation, it is due important to check about the uh, uh, foot and knee investigation, that is the factors which favors the perseveration of the infection in the foot. That is again, this I talked about it in my previous classes, but here also I'll be talking that in the foot it is about intact plantar sensitivity, no or correctable pace equinus, pain-free ankle joint with above average mobility or fixed at right angles. In knee it is above average mobility, no severe or painful osteoarthritis, no or correctable malposition, axis or rotation basically. So this is how the things are being covered and considered in this form. So now further, we'll also talk about certain surgical treatment management, about localized debridement and many other things, intramedullary reaming and further. So here for your information I mentioned the image with the bone fenestration with osteomyelitis focus. Figure A talks about the tracing of the blue stained fistula up to the bone, and B represents the creation of the round drill hole at both ends of the plane fenestration with a diameter of 10 to 12 mm and connection with two saw cuts and removal of the fenestration with a narrow chisel. So this is all a surgical procedure basically. So just to have you an idea that what it is, and also the interior of the medullary cavity can be evacuated by this fenestration using a band chisel and bone bulb. So this is more of a surgical procedure. We don't do that, but just for the further thing. Generally, fenestration is used in architectural areas as well as in the botany or zoology. This term, and that is the arrangement of the windows and doors in the elevations of the roof. So this is making a way for to check and to remove the infections basically through the surgical procedures. Also, so we go further in this that uh, in the surgical management, first we'll talk about the uh, localized debridement. So with the localized debridement, if you see that with chronic osteomyelitis, local revision is performed if the findings are localized. So the soft tissue revision follows the fistula tract. So that's why the size of the bone fenestration is determined on the basis of CT findings. So the round holes are drilled at each end of the fenestration to prevent subsequent fatigue fractures as far as possible. So this is what you just see in this image which I have mentioned. So this is what is fenestration, the making the root, the drilling in the inside. So means the forming the round holes which are drilled at each end of the fenestration to prevent subsequent fatigue fractures as far as possible. So the endosteal bone formation in the intramedullary cavity and any sequestra it contains that are causing the fistula are extensively removed using bent chisels and bone burrs while preserving adequate stability. So the metal parts again retain cement beads and other foreign bodies which are removed, and several tissue samples are collected for microbiological and histological analysis. And then you have intramedullary reaming. So in intermedullary reaming, which is I'll be showing in this also next slide, but we'll give you just a brief information before it. That particularly is suitable for the treatment of the centralized regions of necrotic bone. Okay, I'll repeat again for you that the intermedullary reaming is particularly suitable for the treatment of the centralized regions of the necrotic bone. So these lesions occur mainly in association with reamed intramedullary nail procedures. However, other sequestra, for example, following plate osteosynthesis, also become centralized primarily due to periosteal bone regeneration in Volcrum and are accessible using this approach. Also, there is lots of ample blood flow which helps actually mainly from this kind of blood flow is mainly from the periosteum, and bone necrosis is not expected to recur because of the ample blood flow. We said thanks to the ample blood flow, mainly from the periosteum, and bone necrosis is not expected to occur. I mean to reoccur in this form. Then peripheral sequestra is also important to remove and because this can form certain forms of complications which are not good to be considered. So that's why let me define you sequestra is a piece of dead bone tissue occurring within a diseased or injured bone, typically in chronic osteomyelitis. So that is what is called a sequestra. I will say again, a piece of dead bone tissue occurring within a disease or injured bone, typically in chronic osteomyelitis. So this is how it forms in it, and then you have the diaphysis is rimmed along its entire length in order to eliminate the central sequestrum zones. So the approaches include the classic access approaches for intramedullary nailing of the femur and tibia. So if the intermedullary cavity is completely filled with bone in some places, then the bone is opened proximally and distally. So a bone fenestration with rounded ends is created in the zone filled with endosteal bone, and the bone is locally evacuated. So this enables the guide to to wire to pass this area. So this is again the surgical procedure which we know, but we just have to take care that the the person should be able to move with proper ambulation, because the ambulation is where which is being affected in this form and need to be considered. Also this area I'll be showing, and this I'll be forming an explanation in the next slide, as well as this intramedullary reaming is being shown actually in the next slide for information, which I'll be sharing with you also. So this is how the things are being performed at certain level of basis, because this surgery is very much important, because without the surgical procedures this is not going to be helpful at this point. So there are certain surgical procedures which are to be conducted, there are certain diagnostic criteria which is to be conducted, there are certain debridement procedures, there are sometimes bone grafting which is being conducted. So these all things are very much important to see at some viewpoint. This intermedullary reaming I'll be also discussing again in my further in the in the next slide for your reference, so that it forms a good basis at this point. Uh, and also there are certain specific treatment procedures which has to be considered. That is revision of the metaphyseal intermedullary cavities with pedicle muscle flaps, especially with tibial plateau. So this is again another method which is being considered, and this reaming procedure, as I mentioned, is also important to perform at this level of performance. And the infection, again, as I told you, that it is very very majorly important in our cases, because it alters the weight bearing of the individual weight bearing capacity. And remembering there is a pain in your alignment or in your standing, in your ambulation, then your weight, then your gait pattern changes, your standing proper standing position changes is altered, and the person acquires an abnormal position to stand, to walk, to communicate, to ambulate, to move, to go in and out, to board in and out of a car, or to be at the bed, or to move, sit, stand. Every physical performance of the person is altered. And also this is not just the physicality. For once at one point you are ambulating just for your personal interest, if you have to go from one place to another or something like that. But if there is another point that you just want, that you are ambulating because of some purpose, maybe you are carrying something in your hand, or maybe you are going to take something, to receive something, you are going on a particular leisure task. So these all things are very much important. So it's not just ambulating, it defines it of what purpose you are going with what purpose you are ambulating. So that defines it is very good. formation. That's why it is important to consider the certain facts of information and to see as an occupational therapist into their domain, which is important to check to their profile. Because every patient with the same problem may not be the same patient and with the same problem, because everyone has a different course of contact and they have a different way of performing a particular activity, routines, and many other things. This is why occupational profile is very much important to be considered for the individuals at every level of the therapy. So further, we'll discuss about other surgical management and other forms of recovery, which is being expected from the individual, and also the surgical management which is being performed by the doctors and the orthopedic surgeons in this type of situations. So now here this is an image of a 54-year-old male, which shows about the soft tissue defect in the scar zone with a visible sequestra to be removed. As you can see the A image. B is the image with a medial gastrocnemius muscle flap for defect coverage, and C image represents the muscle flap with split thickness skin graft, gentamicin and impregnated beads in the rim intramedullary cavity removed after 7 days. So that's how the things are being considered, and here the image D, if you see that 10 months after the extension intramedullary reaming with additional bone sequestration to evacuate hypertrophic bone and small sequestra and venting hole in the distal tibial of for removal of the drilling debris. So this is all about the reaming procedure, which I told I'll discuss here. So this reaming procedure is basically peripheral sequestra are removed. The diaphyses are reamed along with its entire length in order to eliminate the central sequestration zones, which you can see in the images. Then approaches include the classic access approaches for intermedullary nailing at the femur and tibia. If the intermedullary cavity is completely filled with bone in some places, then the bone is open proximally and distally. The bone fenestration with rounded ends is created in the zone filled with endosteal bone, and the bone is locally evacuated. This enables the guide wire to pass through this area. This is how the process is done. A lateral venting hole is created distally. So the bone is then reamed to the greatest extent possible, while still ensuring that the periosteal thickening will remain will maintain the bone stability. So the rim diameters is up to 18 mm or not uncommon in the femur. Reamers with good heat dissipation and freshly sharpened beads must be used to prevent overheating of the cortex. This is all of the surgical procedure. And finally, the area is irrigated to thoroughly remove the drilling debris. If removable local antibiotic carrier, for example, beads made of gentamicin impregnated bone cement is inserted, then it should not be left in place for longer than 5 to 7 days. An overflap drainage without suction is inserted to prevent unnecessary blood loss, because this is very much important, because blood is very important. Blood loss is there, the chance infections are very high. In the presence of blood, the infections chances are lesser basically. So an overflow drainage without suction is inserted to prevent unnecessary blood loss. The extremity is usually fully weight bearing. Immediate stabilization with external fixation is only necessary in exceptional cases. Bone grafting measures, usually with analogous cancellous graft, only you can say uh, rarely necessary. And plastic defect closure, in some cases, plastic defect closure of a scar zone or fistula area. And then you have specific treatment options, that is revision of metaphyseal intramedullary cavities with pedicle muscle flaps, especially tibial plateau. So the classic method of you can say covering lesions with local muscle rotation flaps to improve vascularization is rarely used nowadays. So you can say that the blood flow to the bone is usually high, highly elevated in regions of I can say of a chronic osteomyelitis. Bone scintigraphy can supply appropriate evidence for this. With large volume defects in the tibial plateau, the weight bearing capacity of the structure may be restored by thickening cortical elements, but central defects with poor anterior soft tissue cover may often cover may often remain. So in so you can say in such cases, the periosseous gastrocnemius muscle flap can be advanced forward via posterior incision following rigorous debridement in such a way as to also ensure anterior soft tissue restoration. So this is all the things which are being important. This is you can see in this image and how it forms a different form, and also the prognosis and complications we talk that with clearly identifiable causes and rigorous procedures. For example, localized removal of the sequestra, intramedullary reaming, even for extensive disease. The prospects for healing are around 80 to 90% over the long term, and a relapse cannot be ruled out even after a dormancy period of more than 10 years. So, fistula carcinomas are again very rare. So, this is what it looks like, and we consider in the form of infection of the musculoskeletal system of the bones and other things. So this is very important to consider that how these problems can occur. Basically, as I mentioned before, the weight bearing procedure is being altered, the loading capacity is altered. Because of that, there is other chances of bone reshaping, the chances of bone infections, because of the mechanical factors which are acting at the fractured site. The healing is compromised at the bone level, the healing is compromised, the transmission of the weight line through the bone, the healing is compromised. And this is all things which is to be taken care when we actually look forward in this form. And we as an occupational therapist should always help the patient to be ambulated in a very precise manner, in a very good manner, so that the person can perform his own task. This is, as I told before also, that the occupational profile, because this is not necessary that any person who is sitting or doing a desk work will have this kind of problem. We can manage the things by modifying the environment. Imagine some individual who is laborer, imagine some individual who is involved in physical tasks, assembly line worker, in a factory worker, packing and unpacking management. He uh, in a in a kind of world culture where he has to walk to very distinct areas and to for a much more time. He has to climb stairs and further things. So this is all things that to be considered when we actually see in this form. So that's why occupational profile is very important. Maybe in some places we can do some undue modifications which will not hamper the ability of the other workers as well. So environmental modifications, industrial rehab, household modifications are also very much interest in these kind of issues to be targeted. So it's not just this thing that in this lectures which I have taken, I have always considered the medical part further. This is just to give you a brief and to give you the heat of the issue. What problem can occur at this point, and what all things to be taken care when you are dealing with this kind of individuals. Because if you don't see this, because see, the thing is, we as an occupational therapist, something we don't go for the surgery, or we don't even see the occurring the surgical procedures. But it's good if you see this kind of images, which gives you a little better picture of the condition, that how it can affect the person and how much it can cause after the surgery, during the surgery, what all things we get to see. During this kind of phases, you cannot expect the person to do certain range of motion exercises, or other strengthening exercises. But yes, you can also perform the isometric exercises. You just ask the person to contract the muscle, not to move the limb or anything. So as due to the isometric exercises also can maintain the girth of the muscle, the strength of the muscle, until the person is recovered from the surgical procedures. So this isometric exercise is just contracting the muscle within is also important. Even the person who is having fracture and he is plastered, in that also form you can ask the individual to contract the muscle, because during the plaster you cannot have a range of motion exercises, you cannot lift weights, but just merely contracting the muscle with isometric contraction can also help to preserve the uh, muscle muscles physiological properties. Also, if the muscle is not used, it can go for the wasting, which we don't want at all. So that is why the importance is in this one. So that's all for the today's lecture, and in the next class I'll be covering the further other topics of this other subtopics of this topic. And there are further many parts of this topic. And next, we will be also talking about chronic hematogenous osteomyelitis in adults as a differential diagnosis also. So this is very much important, and it's good for you that how much ever deeper you go in the topic, you have a better understanding in it, and it helps you to cure the particular form of issue in the musculoskeletal system, a particular form of disorder in the musculoskeletal system, disease, any kind of infection, and also to deal with it. Because see, this involves all the surgical procedure, but it doesn't mean that you don't have your role. You have your role at particular level, in particular way, at particular limits. So you can always do and help the patient to do better in his selected sense of occupation. Thank you. I have mentioned the references here for you to go and to have the deeper knowledge of the subject, and to clear any doubts if you have any.